I get it, you're staring at a stack of pool cleaner ads, trying to figure out whether any of them actually live up to the hype, and the last thing you want is to drop a few $100s on a robot that spends more time tripping over your steps than scrubbing the walls. You've probably heard the usual promises: no-brainer cleaning, set it and forget it, but the reality is a little messy, especially if you have a concrete or plaster surface that loves to cling to algae, oil, and that stubborn, gummy residue after a summer barbecue. So, before you click add to cart, let's walk through what the DOLPHIN Cayman Robotic Inground pool cleaner actually does in a real backyard, where it shines, and where you might be better off looking elsewhere. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Cayman is built around a thing called the HyperBrush, a rotating scrubber that's meant to tackle the toughest contaminants stuck to the pool wall. In plain English, that means the kind of green film that you can see with the naked eye, the mineral streaks that form after a hard rain, and even the thin layers of sunscreen that cling to the tile after a family day out. Traditional suction vacuums often just glide over those spots, leaving a faint sheen that you have to brush by hand later. The HyperBrush spins at a high rate and actually makes contact with the surface, grinding away that buildup instead of just sucking it up. In my own testing, I set the robot to run for about an hour on a 20-foot rectangular pool that had gone a week without cleaning. When the cycle finished, the walls looked noticeably clearer, no lingering green halo around the steps, and the tile joints were less grimy than they'd been after a month of manual brushing. Another point that separates the Cayman from the cheaper, wheeled bots you see on discount sites is the SmartNav 2.0 scanning system. Instead of blindly bouncing around, it maps the pool floor and walls, plotting a route that covers every inch without retracing steps. The benefit of that is twofold: you waste less energy, and you get a more consistent clean. For larger pools or oddly shaped ones with curves and coves, the scanner adapts on the fly, so you're not left with a patchy spot near the ladder while the robot spends most of its time in the middle. I ran it in a kidney-shaped pool with a deep diving board, and it managed to get into the narrow nook behind the board without getting stuck, a common gripe with older models that rely on wheels and can slip on the slick surface. Now, let's talk about the filter system, because that's where a lot of the maintenance time gets spent. The Cayman uses a top access filter compartment. You simply lift the hatch on the top, dump out the debris, give it a quick rinse, and snap it back shut. The design is meant to be hassle-free, and in practice, it does cut down on the awkward contortions you have to do with bottom-load filters. The filter basket itself holds a decent amount of dirt for a residential unit. I could run a full cleaning cycle on a moderately dirty pool without having to stop and empty it halfway through. That said, if your pool tends to collect a lot of fine sand or pollen, you'll notice the filter needing a rinse more often than you might like, maybe every 2 to 3 cycles instead of once a week. So, who should actually consider buying the Cayman? If you have a medium-sized in-ground pool, say 15 to 25 feet in length, made of plaster, concrete, or tiled surfaces that tend to develop stubborn film, this robot is a solid mid-range option. It's especially worth it if you're already spending an hour or more each week hand scrubbing the walls and you'd rather let a machine do the heavy lifting. The fact that it comes with a 2-year warranty also adds a safety net, meaning you won't be left high and dry if something goes wrong within that window. Homeowners who are particular about water clarity and want a device that can actually scrub rather than just vacuum will find the HyperBrush a real value add. On the flip side, there are some scenarios where you might want to skip the Cayman. If you own a small above-ground pool, think under 12 feet, this robot can be overkill. The cleaning area is larger than the pool itself, and you'll end up paying for power you don't need. Likewise, if your primary concern is simply picking up leaves and larger debris, a basic suction cleaner or a pool skimmer can handle that at a fraction of the price. Finally, if you have a lot of fine dust, pollen, or sandy soil surrounding the pool, you may find yourself emptying the filter more frequently, which could erode the convenience factor. In those cases, a model with a larger or self-cleaning filter cartridge might serve you better. A practical weakness that shows up once you own the Cayman is the power cord management. The robot plugs into a